Welcome to Casts of an Island and to this series of artist talks titled The Practice of Relation.
Hello everyone, I'm Elina. I see very familiar faces in the audience. I will start with the very first series of drawings that is under the title 39.2 square meters and I have no reason to lie. It's a series of drawing in a large scale. It's pencil on paper. They represent domestic spaces, architectural plans, view from above. I have some of the models of this drawing here tonight. In these spaces, the usual perspective is missing. There is no up or down. There is no depth. Foreground and background are becoming one. Human figures, objects, and space are merging into this ultra-thin space. So, yeah, the precision of the architectural drawing with extreme photorealistic drawing merges into a non-space, and everything all of a sudden becomes abstract and uncanny, even if the scenery is very familiar. The whole series was made from all the different rooms of a house, a bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen, a dining room, and a spiral staircase. It's a drawing that maybe resumes a bit better what I have said just before. These marble crystallizations, it's the only, when they're stopped, it's the only way to understand that the steps are changing, but you don't know what is up or down. Background and foreground are becoming one. So here it's the merge of the abstraction. These splashes, these crystallizations of the marble are recalling the quests of Jackson Pollock when he was painting in his canvases in a very chaotic manner. So here the merge, the connection between the architectural precision and the abstract are becoming one. So, yeah, let's move to next installation. It's called Caught in the Act. It was an installation made in 2009. It was exhibited in Old Powerhouse in Nimak, in Nicosia. In the space, we installed a very bright light, and we managed to erase all the drop shadows of all the objects. Again, here, domestic objects. What we did in a second phase, we redrew the shadows of each object, but the shadows, they were not obeying in any natural law. Shadow was going right, left, small, big. So we gave to each object its own autonomy, its own moment in the light. So all these objects, they could coexist in the same space, but coming from different moments. It was like a three-dimensional spatial collage. Once the viewer was entering the space, he could realize that he didn't have the shadow himself, so he could find himself floating among these creatures. Just to make a small accent, shadow in literature or psychology has a lot of connotations. In the previous drawings, they were the cast shadows, the dropping shadows, they have been removed. Here, the shadows are getting the lead. To move to a second series of drawings, I wasn't really done with the first one. Was much more to take in consideration. So I moved into a second phase of these drawings, again with the same principles and architectural drawings, no perspective, no hierarchy, no background, everything has the same value. It's just that here in this second series, the compositions are more fractal and more absurd. And of course, the connotations of the vanitas are much more present. Vanitas, it's this genre in the still life painting that flourished in the 17th century in Netherlands with a very strong moral connotations. These still lifes, they were addressing to the viewer to remind him about his mortality and how life is short, short as a breath, and should be treated with appreciation. In those vanitas, no very usual and popular symbols. They were the skulls, the flowers, to remind us that life is pretty, but we're very fragile. They were populated with bubbles, candles, burning candles, books to recall our intellect, food, rotten food, shells, snails. I'll come soon to the snails again. In the vanitas, snail, because it's an hermaphrodite animal, was symbolizing Virgin Mary. You will see how I'm using snails later on. Here I will just put you as well the swimming fin. It's one object that I'm using oftenly in my work, but it reappears in different materials and different shapes. Here it's a kitchen. And here we can see the drawing that is exhibited over there. It's called National Day with Fork and Mulberry Leaves. It's from 2012. Here you can see a flagpole, some stones, a fork, screws, pieces of wood, a head of Venus. Again, no hierarchy, no depth, no up and down. Everything has the same value. And maybe just to put an accent on the wondering of all these endless quests of humans searching meaning over and over again through their existence. This exhibition, this series was presented in Paris, in the City Hall of Paris. And here we're moving into another chapter, composition with wood, fans, and plastic bags. There were, in this series, there were photographs taken with an intention to give a three-dimensionality in the objects represented. And these three-dimensional objects, the representation of these three-dimensional objects, they were adjusted on these flat volumes of concrete, just to create a trompe-l'oeil, an illusion that everything was real. So entering the space, you could just, because was the cutouts as well, that there is something real. But they were just photographs. Balancing. So I managed to make these heavy volumes of concrete to balance in between them and in a way question gravity. Gravity didn't exist in the architectural drawings because there was no depth. Everything was floating on the surface of the paper. In the installation with the shadows, there was still no gravity because everything floats in its own moment. So here once more questionings around gravity and depth. Here I will spot you a washing machine that we're going to see a bit later on, again changing shape and form. And a version with variation in wood, formalistic approach, representations of wood on wood. And here I will show you the swimming fin that changed the shape and form. And let's move to Altitudo. Like my quests of the three-dimensionality of the images that we just saw previously, adjusted on flat volumes, these 2-dimension and 3D together, led me to research the bas reliefs. Bas relief, it's a form of art, it's a form of sculpture that merges characteristics from the pictorial world of painting, connected with the sculpture in a thin slab of marble or stone, approximately of 10 centimeters. There is carved representations. So with the intention to give the illusion that there is depth, but it's just an illusion. In the bas reliefs, everything is compressed once more. This previous chapter led me to my father's studio. He's one of the last stone carvers of the island. He's here with us. He's there. With the studio and all the machinery and the technique, I inherited a lot of architectural leftovers from different projects that he used to work through the years, that they became part of the works. He's working, and I'm working with the Cypriot limestone. It's a calcareous stone. The geological name of this stone is calcarenite stone Pachna formation, and it's connected with the geological birth of Cyprus. It's connected as well with the different mythologies of Cyprus, with the birth of Venus coming up through the foams. This stone, it was the first thing that got raised through the deep sea to the top of the mountain. That's why we can find and see fossilized seashells on the top of the mountains, something that proves that Cyprus was sunk into the water. So this material, it's actually the first inhabitant of Cyprus. So yeah, that's the stone that we're using with those connotations. So here, I created these assemblages. I also carved these domestic objects. Here it's a washing machine as well. Here are some carved bricks with some sideboards and architectural elements. Here it's the palm leaf that it's exhibited here. It's part of the pieces that are presented here. The palm leaf nature was a great inspiration as well for our ancestors. Like this is a direct referral to the antefix. Antefixes are these ornaments, architectural ornaments that we find on Parthenon, for example, that they're inspired by the shape of a palm leaf, and then they became architectural ornaments. And in my case, the architecture became back nature again. Here, just to say that this material was never really appreciated as an art material from our ancestors. It was mainly used for architecture and construction. So in the biography and the DNA of the material, it's floating architecture and construction. That's why those sculptures, they were very related with architecture imagery. It's a porous, introvert, and humble material in comparison with the shiny finish of the divine Greek white marble. That was maybe not enough bright in the eyes of Cypriots, ancient and new. So here in this exhibition, it was an attempt to create these totemic homages to Cyprus, to us, to ourselves, and maybe start to reconsider and reappreciate ourselves. So everything was installed as an archaeological ruin in the exhibition. The viewer could circulate, there was no specific path, the viewer could circulate in the space, once more floating in this fossilized environment. Here the volumes, they were treated mainly as reliefs, compressed volumes. So once more the three-dimensional becomes compressed and fossilized, stacked in time. There was no other material in the space. So you could find once more yourself circulating around these totemic homages to our leftovers, architectural leftovers. Just what was unique with these sculptures, it's different architectural ornaments, maybe coming from a door, from a window, a column, a floor. They were reconnected again to those assemblages to recreate these compressed spaces. This exhibition was dedicated to these heroes of resistance, these creatures that managed to develop mechanisms to survive symbolically and literally. So the first protagonists are the snails. The snails can hibernate in the summer. They can sleep when there is no rain. They shut in their shelf and they can stay in that situation up to 3 years. When there is no rain, they stay asleep, and when rain comes, they come up and it's nothing happened. So yes, snails, prickly pears, prickly pear cactuses, that they are second protagonists, are papoutsosyges in Cypriot. It's the first immigrant plants that they came from Latin America, from the New World to the Old World with the first explorers. They liked our country and they became almost endemic, and they live among us since many years. Prickly pear cactuses, they can survive without water, without soil for many, many months and almost years. Here you can see a real leaf of prickly pear with a carved one. Here it's snails again. This piece is called Nest. It's an homage around pigeons of Cyprus. The pigeon, it's among us since many years. It was the holy bird of Venus. It was a bird of fertility and love. And it changed religion a few thousand years later. From the 12 gods came to the Christianity. It became the symbol of the Holy Spirit, and then it became the symbol of our flag. And nowadays they're saying that pigeons are the flying rats full with germs. So once the pigeon didn't really work in Cyprus, there is not really peace around here. So why not snails? They're resisting and they're here. Why not a nest with snails instead with pigeon? Here you can see this slash of snails. As well, you can see here in the exhibitional space a wreath with snails. So instead of pigeons, snails, instead of bay leaves and olive trees, why not prickly pear cactuses? And of course, the Cypriot stone. Here I will make a small pause. I will say that in this exhibition, I invited Luisa Papaloizou. Most of you, I guess you know her. It's one of the beloved friends and very important writer. And I invited her that we write this book, her with language and me with drawings. It was just, the collaboration was so fertile and it was so flourishing that the language came into the work as well. So here I have this chain necklace that writes Anidres. I will come back to the collaboration with Luisa a bit later. Anhydros, a tree that is anhydro, is a tree that managed to drop its roots so deep in the ground that it does not need to be watered, or it doesn't need the rain to survive. It obtained like a magical power to be autonomous and self-sufficient. So in the context of the exhibition of drought, anhydros, it's someone that is a power human, superhuman. Here, this piece in Greek, it's called dermatostixia. In English, we translate it into stone skins. There is a British art critic, Adrian Stokes, that he writes a lot about stone. It's a material that absorbs time and space because it's a porous material. And Adrian Stokes says that the first sculptor of this material is the weather conditions, the humidity and the rain. Here you can see this natural patina growing in these pieces that I found at the studio. Most probably they were there laying since the 80s, the upper part. It's a natural mucus of the stone. And Adrian Stokes says something very poetic, like, except the weather conditions, most of all, it's our breath that sculpts this material. So in a very poetic way, we're related directly and indirectly with this material. It's a very old material. It's started to being raising since 90 million years ago. And it lives here in the island before us and most probably after us. Again, the snails. And here it's series with these, they're inspired from the ancient figurines. If you enter an archaeological museum, at least through my eyes, all the artifacts are proofs of resistance and survival. It's pots for food, drinking, weapons, tools, and then jewelry that maybe they were connected with reproduction, another way of keep existing. So many years, 1,000 years later, these pieces are here to remind us that the essence, the importance in our lives are still the same. Fertility, love, death, fears. So in the analogies of time, connecting with this material, the importance are really taking a step up, and what it's really not important, just getting erased in life. Here, this piece, it's called Monument. It's a monument dedicated to water. Their presentations of water, they were made from hematite stones. And here, slowly, we're entering the reading room. Just the last piece here, it's Krokalla, Gobble. It's volcanic stone that it was naturally sculpted in a river from the flows of the water. And it got the shape of a heart and just hanging around in the space. Here, in this chapter, the heavy construction, the architectural, and the brutal way of treating a previous chapter in Altitude of the Work got erased. This masculine technique of carving became much more fluid. Everything becomes much more fine and fragile. The material connects with these contradictory materials of metal hanging, becoming light. So yeah, it was an attempt to push into the fragility as well of the material. And here we're entering the reading room. Here was a collaboration with Luisa. Tanaglypha, it was a neologism coming after Luisa. Here we had these two Siamese books together, one with the language of reading and the other with the language of drawings. I invited Luisa first to tell you that language is not the first time that it's appearing in the work. Language, it's used to my eyes as a material, this two-dimensional material, these traces on a paper, that they can get a form and a shape and become a volume and can describe landscapes and feelings. So I'm using the language under these properties. So when I invited Luisa, I had in mind Tovuni, that it was very geological and very earthy. Though she had a carte blanche, and it was very well that she decided to position her writings in Limassol of today instead in the historical aspects of her previous book. It's a short format writings. Here are some really short, so maybe you can read. The way that she writes is very visual as well. She recalls the Cypriot signs. She writes about tattoos, how visually the language looks. And though at the beginning you don't understand if there is connection in between the chapters, slowly you start to realize that it's a love story, there's a failure, repetition, and she never gives the catharsis of water. Whenever you find water, it's in small bottles of 50 SL or in a pool or in an aquarium. So she never really gives the catharsis of water. She writes about heart. She writes about Mediterranean, Mesogios. Mediterranean, it's the mezzo of the terra, the middle of the earth, the center of the earth. And it says, according to the Chinese Mediterranean, it's in the Pacific Ocean. About all these stable lines where we decide to give connotation to how the necessity to find meaning, to, then coming back to, she wanted to be here today, but she couldn't, so she's sending her regards. Just to come a bit to my little narrative, I had a Molensky at home, and I decided to do different drawings just to see how it goes and to pick up the drawings and do a better version for the publication. But slowly I realized like the fear of the lines started, and the insecurity of the first drawings, they become too much more structured, starting to have a rhythm in the drawing. You could find a small oasis with water, and then some chapters with bad grass, just to come what is abstract and what is real, just to recall, to remind you of the Jackson Pollock drawing, the spiral staircase. Here, these scribbles are scribbles, but when you add a few snails, or if you add 2 eggs, immediately they become bad grass and they become a nest. So it was all these quests, the wreaths, the snakes, that they're related with drought in Cyprus. First, when Saint Helene came to Cyprus after a long period of drought, she said that the island was full with snakes, poisonous snakes, and then she came back to bring the cats. Then a snake was a symbol of fertility back in the ancient times before Christianity. So it's once more all the symbols that they're circulating around. And last chapter, I used to work this piece, Evastasis and Distasis, the holders of resistance, in the same time that I was working the reliefs, the chapter that I just showed you. Evastasis and Distasis, it's a public commission. It's installed permanently in one of the oldest schools of Limassol, in Lanitium Gymnasium. Here it was an attempt to trace the story and the history of Cyprus through its nature and seemingly unimportant objects. You might recognize some of the protagonists. It's the birds of Cyprus, the pigeons of Cyprus, the military surveillance that it becomes Pezounarko, pigeon nest, prickly pears, the prosfigosimo, the refugee stamp, and the Tripolic plaques. How can you trace the history of war and colonialism through the Tripolic British plaques? Actually, from wherever the English have passed, they left behind the Tripolic plaques. So if you search in which countries they do have Tripolic plaques, you know that the English, they were there. So in this PDF, I will take it very fast. It's from the beginning, kind of the beginning. It's the maquette in the studio. And then how the big slabs coming from the factory, from the quarry, from the mountain. And studio shots, carving prickly pear wreaths and pigeons. And here it's the monoblock chair carved in a monolith piece that it becomes like a throne almost. This object that lives in our collective memory in Cyprus. Here it's studies how to do the prosfigosimo and moving to the installation. Here actually this installation was installed, this piece was installed in an inner yard in the school. This material is connected with architecture, like a Curium theater, the Agoras, the sanctuaries. They were gathering spots, gathering places, so people they could meet. Here, the piece was thought in that way, that it's a gathering place. It's not only a piece to be watched, it's a piece to be used as well. So the students can sit, can climb, and can live with it as a social part. Here, maybe this shot can remind you of the drawing that it's here. The composition is very similar. So again, the two-dimensional goes to the three-dimensionality. From the flat architecture goes to the three-dimensionality. And yeah, thank you for your patience. Thank you for coming.